Hello everyone and welcome to WGBS TV Live, brought to you by SupermanHomepage.com, the number one Superman fan site in the world. My name is Steve Eunice. In tonight's March 24th, 2020 show, we're going to be covering a range of topics, including shutdowns left, right and centre. We're going to be talking about Supergirl's latest episode, and probably the last one for a while. We're going to be talking about what's happening with the comic book industry. We're going to be talking about what you can read this week and so much more. We're also going to turn to you to get your involvement. You can ask questions, make any comments you like to make, and get involved in the show. And to let you know how all that works and how you can get involved in tonight's show, let me introduce you to my co-host, Mr. Michael Bailey. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Steve. And hey, everybody watching us live right now on YouTube. WGBS Live is all about Superman. And because of that, we want to hear from the people that are watching us live on YouTube right now. And if we don't have a lot going on, and there's a lot going on, but if we don't have a lot going on and you want to get involved in the show, there's an easy way to do it. First, you're going to need Skype. Search for Skype. Search for the Superman homepage. Not search for Skype. Get on Skype and search for the Superman homepage. Send us a message that you'd like to be part of the show, and we'll see about working you in. Now, a couple of things. One, wait for us to call you and message us. Don't try to call in. It kind of screws things up. And if you have an external speaker that you're watching the show with, please turn that off when we call you, because we're on a delay and it kind of screws the audio up.
That's right. So, yes, feel free to join in. Also, if you're watching live via YouTube, get involved in the comments section there. Michael and I will keep an eye on all your remarks and questions, and we will refer to them as the show continues. And a huge thank you to our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, Tina Murray and John Patrick Van Pelt. We appreciate your support. And if you want to support the Superman homepage, then all you have to do is visit patreon.com/Superman homepage. Well, Mike, it's been another crazy week in the world of COVID-19. We're living in unprecedented times where things are restrictions are being put in place, businesses are being shut down, our livelihoods are being stressed to the max, and people are being told stay at home, stay safe, don't mingle, don't go out in public spaces if possible. It's really creating a huge havoc right around the world. Now, as comic book geeks and people who are online nerds, as we've been called in the past, the isolation isn't too difficult. I mean, we always seem to be able to keep ourselves busy somehow, but now it's impacting even on us comic book nerds, because there's issues happening around every walk of life.
Yeah, I saw a meme a couple weeks ago that we're Gen Xers. I'm on the kind of the tail end of Gen X. You're in really kind of the early part of it. So we represent kind of that gulf of the generation. But we got the boomers on one side, and you got the millennials and the Gen Zs on the other. And I'm not insulting either one. It's just every generation handles these things differently. And I think with Gen Xers in particular, the one thing that said this is our time not to shine. Because we're the generation that really got into like the 80s, when The Stand was a huge thing with Stephen King fans, or the zombie stuff that popped up 10 years ago and still literally, ironically, hasn't died. We have been talking about these things. Now, this is the thing that I want to say more than anything else. For anyone that ever wondered what it would be like to be at the beginning of a paradigm-changing event in our world, congratulations, you're there. So this is one of those things where that we need to flatten the curve. So stay home unless you absolutely can't. I know we got people who work in the medical industry. They can't. They have to go to work.
Yep.
Apparently, my job's considered essential. I was even given a letter today in case we go on full lockdown that I can show to cops that may pull me over as I'm trying to get to work. That's weird. But it's just, it's just there's so much going on, but the most important thing is that it's not about you. It's not about your comfort. It's about you going out and then potentially exposing people who have compromised immune systems or are elderly or are going through chemo, and it's not worth going and hanging out at a bar to potentially kill everybody.
Yep, indeed. It's just important to the wider community, and we're always, as Superman fans, talking about the wider community and being helpful to all people, ensuring that we're looking at the greater good, and that's what our character that we love stands for. So we have to do our part and just stay in, reduce the risk of exposure, not just to yourself, because people of our generation and younger probably won't get that sick, and some people have. There are people who have definitely been ill and died because of COVID-19 amongst people of our age group and younger. But yeah, it is the older generation who is most likely to to perish because of the coronavirus. So we just have to be as diligent as we can and do the right thing, whatever discomfort we might feel at having to stay home, God forbid. Having a little bit of a problem with the Skype connection. That is obviously an ongoing issue with people now staying at home. The internet is finding it difficult to people, the networks are finding it difficult to sustain the amount of people going online. Michael will join me as soon as he can. I will endeavour to get Michael back ASAP, so bear with us. Here we go, we've made a reconnection now. So
apparently I was speaking the truth.
Yes.
That was upsetting people.
Yeah, so back on. That's good, all good. We're back in action. Alright, well, let's get on to the Superman side of things. No movie news. I haven't seen Superman Red Sun, unfortunately, yet. I haven't been able to get out to the store and pick up my copy, so that might have to wait until next week. I'll endeavour to try to get out and get that. So we're both in the same situation there. No Superman Red Sun to speak about this week. We will try to get that done next week. But Supergirl. We did have a new episode of Supergirl on Sunday night there in the US, and last night here in Australia. It was titled Alex in Wonderland. It was the 16th episode of Season 5, and possibly the last one we'll see for a little bit. But you gave it a 4 out of 5, saying that this episode really impressed you on many levels. You thought it was one of the strongest on an emotional front.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of dealing with some very complicated issues, I think the show did a really good job of giving them their due and managing to have them work into the overall plot as well, which that's hard to do. But seeing what Alex was going through, I was like, okay, that's grief. This is how grief works. Grief's complicated. I talked about the Kubler-Ross-Kessler model. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Of the 5 stages of grief. Those are guideposts. Those aren't a map.
Exactly.
And seeing, also getting to deal with the complexity of Kara and Alex's relationship, and the fact that, Alex said at the beginning of the episode, they put a lot on her as a teenager. It's just like, okay, not only do you have a new adopted sister, but check this out, she's an alien. We got to keep that a secret. She has superpowers. We got to keep that a secret. And she's related to the world's greatest hero. Just make sure she doesn't get into trouble.
Yeah, that was a lot. I found it. I wasn't sure at first how I really felt about Alex's animosity towards her dad. I didn't think it was. It seemed a little bit out of character, but then as she explained, I understood it. But I hadn't seen that previous. I hadn't really seen any of that animosity towards him in earlier episodes, I could get on board with it once it was explained, and what you've just said kind of highlights many of the aspects that and how many times supposedly he had died, and she just was just emotionally distraught at all this over and over and over again. But the animosity that she had towards him seemed to come out of left field for me.
It probably came out of left field because it is something that I can see happening, but because of how the show works, it's not something that was on the minds of the writers at the time. We're dealing with we're dealing with new showrunners now. It was the second season that he came back, right? Where am I? It wasn't the third. The third was the whole ring thing. So it was the second season that he came back, and he was a villain. He was working with the bad guys, and yeah, he turned in the end. But at the same time, there was that betrayal, and there's got to be something about thinking that somebody's dead. They come back, and they're fighting against you, and then they disappear again. You never hear from them. You never get that closure. Closure's kind of... It used to be one of those things that people would... It was like a buzzword for psychobabble. It was like, well, we need closure. But closure is a real thing. And, it's never finite. It's never definite. But at least... you could at least try to have that. And the fact that he died and she never got to have that, I could see that's where it's all coming from. Now, you're right. We haven't really seen where this is coming from, but I think the writers did a good enough job explaining her position and then showing that she realized how she was acting. And I thought it was a really good moment for... I mean, I know Kelly's, into therapy. At one point she's like, I don't want to be psychoanalyzed by my girlfriend. And that's got to be annoying, I would assume. If you were married to somebody like that and they were constantly knowing what you were feeling and you're just trying to have a conversation. But at the same time, it was a really nice relationship moment for them because they got to have a very real conversation. And there are times, I wrote this in my review, there are times where I'm upset and I'm a complete jerk.
Yeah.
And I'll sit down with my wife later and I'll go, look, I'm really sorry that I was a jerk. And she understands. It's the same thing with her. I'm like, wow, this is like one of the most realistic relationships I've ever seen on this show.
Yeah, no, indeed. There was a lot to unpack with this episode, many different aspects. I'm going to go through some of John Patrick Van Pelt's questions. He says, do you think it was a good idea for Alex to go into the virtual reality just after she lost her father? Well, obviously, it wasn't a good idea because that kind of played out, but I can understand people wanting an escape from their grief. It's a natural reaction that people, it just gets too much for them, and some people want to tune out and want to unpack it in small bites. So it's a natural reaction to some people go out and mow the lawn, some people go out and break things, whatever it might be, that you can unpack your emotions and your feelings by disconnecting from reality in some way.
Yeah, when to tell a really personal story, my mother passed away when I was 17 of cancer, and one of the last time she went into the hospital, I remember they took her. It was on, and the ambulance came and they loaded her in and they took her off, and my dad went with her, and I was just sitting at the table. My grandparents were there, and I said, I just got to get out of here. And I went to the mall and I played video games for like 3 hours. I mean, and virtual reality is very much like a video game. So, the fact that she got trapped is what made it unhealthy. Doing it, because she came to the conclusion, okay, I'm done with this, right? It's like, oh, I think I've worked through everything I need to work through right now. I'm ready to go back. And then she couldn't. So, and then her eyes went red. And that's a really creepy effect, by the way.
It was very good.
Like, get some Visine in there. What the heck's going on? But no, I just think her going into the VR, especially since that's kind of one of the functions of the VR, she wanted to go break stuff. And you can't do that in real life and not suffer consequences. So why not go be Supergirl?
Yeah, exactly. How does Abraham Lincoln sing so well at karaoke? Is John's question.
Hey.
Yeah, well, who knows? We've never heard whether or not he could sing at karaoke. It wasn't invented back then. But look, obviously, it's a person playing Abe in the virtual reality. And just like the guy shredding the guitar, you're all able to do whatever the heck you want to do in virtual reality world. Just like Alex being Supergirl.
So Justin asks, what games did you play? I remember playing Mortal Kombat and being terrible at it. I was always better at Street Fighter 2 than Mortal Kombat. And there was like a video, like an arcade game for G.I. Joe that I played for like an hour. Because you were just going through and shooting people. So it was just one of those things. You know, I was 17, I had a license, I could do that. So, but yes, I'm amused that the question got asked. So I figured I should answer it.
No, good question. Why doesn't Alex listen to Kelly and end the simulation in the virtual reality world? Well, at that point, she's on the verge of not believing that it is virtual reality. She's just like those other people, assuming now, or brainwashed, if you like, to assuming that it is reality and that there's no other reality. It's like someone coming up to you and I now and saying, get out of this virtual reality world you're in. It's like, what? Oh, this is real life. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was a really smooth bit of acting where she comes in and she explains it, and Alex puts her arm on her and goes, "Oh no, Sai got to Kelly," and it's just like, "Oh God, no, this is terrible, no, abort."
And even though we didn't get to see Dean Cain as Jeremiah Danvers, it was just a stand-in that from behind was supposed to look like him at one point. Do you remember that? Hello, Mike?
Hello?
You can't hear me? Looks like we've got internet connection problems. Okay, that's weird. Well, I can hear you. So people let me know if you can hear me or you can hear Michael. Either one. But
I can hear you now. So.
Oh, okay. That's good. That must have just been a glitch. I was saying it was a Dean Cain stand-in. Obviously, just somebody, a lookalike.
Yeah, and that's... I guess he just wasn't going to show up. I mean, if they killed him off, he has no real reason to stick around, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, I'm not showing up for this episode. The people who have been kidnapped, and Tina's asking, how the hell are they floating up in midair? You can't even see any kind of ropes or wires dangling them there. They just seem to be... But then again, with Leviathan, they've got this cloaking... mesh kind of thing that you can not see, and it kind of puts a different perspective in what you're looking at when what's his name comes in to check out that warehouse. So who knows what kind of technology they've got at their disposal.
That was a really good effect and a really good scene too. That's another thing I was really impressed with. William actually wasn't there just to be kind of a love interest. It's like he was doing the reporting that I guess Kara would normally do, and that whole thing of him coming almost face to face with that woman, and then not seeing the illusion that they were casting. However, they were casting that. I was like, that's really creepy. But he found the one thing. He found the clue. So
that bracelet,
the hospital bracelet. So I'm like, okay. This is really leading somewhere kind of cool.
Everyone seemed to have, a great deal to do, like an important part in this episode, important role to play. And I thought the acting from some of the, David is his name Harewood?
Yeah.
Had multiple roles to play. He had his normal self to play. He had the DEO, head of DEO to play, and then he had to play the role of what's his name?
Hank Henshaw.
Hank Henshaw, yes. So and then even using Brainiac 5, Jesse Rath's version of Brainiac 5 in the virtual reality was very gung ho. It just seemed like everyone was playing it up, like hamming it up.
I had totally forgotten how David Harewood acted when John was head of the DEO. That kind of authority. Now, it was a little overdone in places, but that's essentially what he was. He was, just, Alex, I need you back at the DEO, and the way he stood. I was just so impressed because he's evolved. The character has evolved so much over the last couple of years that you kind of forget what a hard ass he was.
Yeah.
And seeing him kind of back in that, and him like snapping right back into the role, I was like, that's really cool. And seeing annoying Brainy again reminds me, wow, Jesse Rath is doing such a great job this season of separating himself from that role of doing the William Shatner kind of school of acting that he was doing for Brainy. I just everybody in the VR was, they looked like they were having fun.
Yeah, exactly. And while Melissa Benoist didn't have too much to do in this episode, she still played a pivotal role. And it was great to see Helen Slater return as Eliza. So a nice cameo there for her.
Yeah, and like a good one too, because not only did she get to play in the VR, but she got to, deliver the eulogy at the end, and it was kind of sweet. I would have liked to have seen more of it, but the episode was pretty packed as it was, and now we're really on to something. I was surprised because if I'm correct. The actress that Nicole Maines, is that her name?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yeah.
Nianel, she said in an interview recently that they were in the middle of shooting the finale when the production got halted. So that kind of suggests that, and they were only doing some like some final shots for it. So I'm kind of curious if they're just holding on to episodes at this point, and then they'll release more, as they get, they're able to get back to production. That's one of the things is that of what we were talking about earlier. Think of all the people that are affected in Vancouver by those shows not being in production.
It's just massive. It's having such a cascading effect on so many different areas of business. I mean, from catering to filming to actors to production to everybody. And we don't know now what's going to happen because there is no promo trailer for the next episode of Supergirl. We know, having had the 16th, that means there are still 6 in the can, or still 6 still to come. Not necessarily in the can, because we don't know how far they've gotten on those and what's needed to release those. So we're really kind of in no man's land at the moment, waiting to hear from the CW what their plans are with releasing any more episodes that they may already have shot and edited together, or obviously there's post-production stuff. So if those people have been told, no, you have to go stay at home, then there's no music, no special effects that can be done, even though those episodes have been filmed and are ready for editing and all that kind of stuff. If the post-production stuff can't be done on them, then they can't be released. So it's not just about the filming and the production being shut down, it's about what happens once the actors have done their job, all the other parts that have to be put together for it to get to TV side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of staggering, and it makes me wonder. I think really movies are probably a little more impacted by this, simply because there's more on the line of a release. I mean, they're delaying. I think they're delaying the Wonder Woman. They're not doing some of the Universal has been putting their stuff on streaming for an elevated price, which is probably still cheaper than going to the theater, in all honesty. But you have so much riding on large movies that if those don't go through, that's pretty bad for the studios. But TV, it's terrible. I mean, that's really, I know that sounds like kind of silly to think of it, but this is just a microcosm, of the larger things going on in the world. So, I mean, thank God we have streaming services, but, the CW's got to fill airtime. Now, they can play reruns, and people might watch them, but that's ad revenue that stations are going to lose. So, wow.
Yeah, there's just so much. Like I said, it's a cascading effect, just a snowball So, no new episode of Supergirl scheduled for this Sunday that I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything about what's happening further down the track. But we just have to hang in there and wait and see what happens, because everything in life at the moment is a very fluid situation. It's changing from day to day. So it's just watch this space and be thankful that we have past episodes that we can rewatch. We've got other material that we can spend time on. But at the moment, no new episodes of Supergirl scheduled for the immediate future.
Justin mistakenly typed Wonder Woman 1884. Given how they're playing loose with the timeline, I'd like to see a Wonder Woman 1884 film. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, indeed. But there are, as I said, things you can watch. If you're in the US, DC Universe Online Digital Streaming Service, or whatever it's called, DC Universe, has announced what things will be available in April. And for Superman fans, there's a whole slew of animated movies, a lot of the Justice League animated movies, from Justice League Gods and Monsters, The Flashpoint Paradox, Justice League War, Justice League Doom, The New Frontier, Throne of Atlantis, and Justice League vs. Teen Titans will all be available on DC Universe from April 1st, so next week. And then there's a whole stack of different digital comics that you can read on the digital streaming service, including issues of Adventures of the Super Sons, Justice League, Young Justice, Super Friends, Supergirl, Superman, Wonder Twins, and so much more. Heroes in Crisis #8 as well, all coming out in April on the DC Universe digital streaming service. So if you're a subscriber to that, then you've got plenty of stuff to hold you over if you're at home and self-isolating in April.
Yeah, the thing that I'm wondering is, we're going to be getting into the kind of catastrophic body blow that was dealt to the comic book industry this week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're going to continue with the deceased stuff?
Well, we haven't got zombies going around, but...
Yeah, but it's a pandemic.
True.
I mean, is that, insensitive now? Because... it's pretty calm where I live, but in a couple of the counties here in the state of Georgia, they have hundreds of cases, and there are more cases out there, but we don't know about them because testing isn't widely available. So, do we really need a pandemic type story right now?
True, I don't know. And Mind the Gap is asking about April 1st. Do we really need April Fool's Day jokes this year?
Yeah, that I am not looking forward to that day because it brings out the jerks anyways. So I don't need that in my life. I really don't.
Yeah, well, I don't know how responsible we'll be here at the Superman homepage. I'll just have to see how I'm feeling.
If you do, just don't make anything about the virus.
No, that would be irresponsible.
Yeah, just the most ludicrous, outrageous thing you can think of.
See what we can do. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're at the halfway point of tonight's show. We're going to start talking about the comic book side of things right after these messages, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We'll be back in a moment with the exciting climax of today's episode. So stand by.
Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
It's a plane. No, it's SupermanHomepage.com, the #1 Superman fan site in the world. SupermanHomepage.com, covering the world of Superman from the 1930s to today. News, reviews, rumors, and reports. SupermanHomepage.com for all your Superman comics, TV shows, movies, cartoons, radio shows, and more. Everything you ever wanted to know about the Man of Steel and more. SupermanHomepage.com.
Thanks, Superman Homepage, for all the support over the years. I really appreciate it.
I'm Matt Balmer. I'm the voice of Superman in Superman Unbound, and this is the Superman Homepage.
Right here on Superman Homepage.
Well, fellows and girls, what I have to say will only take a few seconds.
but I hope it sticks with you for a long time. It's about cleanliness, being clean in mind as well as in body. Now, believe me when I tell you that a clean mind in a clean body is important to success and happiness in life. For instance, in school, in your social life, and later when you grow up in your business contacts, the quality of the clothes you wear is never as important as the condition of them. In other words, it's never as important to be expensively dressed as it is to be neat and clean. Being neat and clean always leaves a good impression. And a good impression is important to success. Well, the same thing is true of a clean mind. So begin now to develop the habit of being clean in mind and body. Think clean and keep clean. Lack of cleanliness is usually a sign of carelessness, and carelessness indicates laziness. Remember always that carelessness and laziness lead to failure. Start now to prepare for success by thinking clean and being clean.
And we're back, and timely message from Superman about cleanliness. Even if he's talking about clean of mind, being clean in general is probably a good idea.
I don't know. I love the image you use though, because I know that's from a real PSA, but you can just use it for anything. It's like Superman just like talking to them about like the movies he watched last night and stuff. It's just like these kids are just enraptured. So
if you had the voice of Bud Collyer, you could pretty much sell anything, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
All right, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking comic books now. Before we get into what you've touched on about what's happening with the comic book industry, I was happy to read this week that not only is Superman America's favourite superhero, as we spoke about last week from a recent poll, but he's also Batman's favourite superhero, as revealed in the pages of Detective Comics 1017. Tom Taylor revealed this panel. Where is it? Here we go. That's the comic book cover, Detective Comics 1017. But in the book, the revelation came when orphan Miguel Flores, having been rescued by Batman and Robin, tells the Dark Knight that his favourite superhero is Superman. Batman reveals that Superman is his favourite too.
Yeah, Bruce isn't that egotistical.
No.
I mean, Robin might get a little salty, but it's just like, really? I'm right here. But yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've kind of moved away from Batman having such a aggressive attitude towards Superman. I was talking the other day with somebody about the fact that back in the early 2000s, he called him the alien and said he couldn't be trusted. And I'm just like, oh God, I don't miss that. I really don't. It's like they took this thing that happened around 1986 and just made it worse, when it seemed like for a while there it was getting better. And then thankfully Jeff Loeb came along and improved their relationship. So it's nice seeing this. I mean, they're not like back to being chums.
No.
But it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and Tom Taylor took to Twitter to say, Batman's favourite superhero is Superman. I got to write this in canon. No one change it. Watching you, other writers.
It'll be Bendis.
Yes, indeed. So, good to see that. That was just a nice little thing. All right, now to the big story of the week for comic book readers was the fact that, unfortunately, Diamond Comic Distributors has announced that they'll be suspending new comic book orders from being shipped to its warehouse, effective immediately. And now, for you people who might not know who Diamond Comic Distributors are, they are the big guns in the comic book world. They distribute ship books from DC Comics, Marvel, and all other major publishers. So this means that only the books currently in their distribution warehouse will be sent to retailers. So basically, this coming week's books, and after that, books as of April 1st there will be no new books, from what I'm gathering, for the foreseeable future.
Now, when this was first kind of broken as a story, a certain news site that revels in this sort of thing gave kind of a misleading headline that this was like permanent. And then you read the articles and the announcement comes out and it turns out that it's it's a temporary thing, and it has everything to do with the pandemic going on. They don't want to put their warehouse people in harm's way, but this delivers a significant body blow to the comic book industry.
For sure.
Because it's been on life support for a really long time. Everybody has been predicting the death of the comic book industry since the late 70s. There's a story that Dave Olbrich, who I believe was one of the early people involved with Image, or one of those independent companies that sprang up in the 90s that was a big deal. Marv Wolfman told him in like 1978, don't bother getting to comics, in 5 years they won't be here. And everyone says that in 5 years comics won't be here, in 5 years comics won't be here, and they keep staying around. It's an industry that has been in a recession for a very long time. Sales, take bumps, but then, they go down again because it's not the same paradigm that it was in the 80s and 90s. A lot of people, you get into these discussions and hear people debating, like that comic shops are terrible because, it's such an insular place, and some of them are run by like little clubhouses, so it's not really a business, which detracts from the companies, the shops that are neat, clean, and professional. But it does kind of, it's a limited distribution point because grocery stores and convenience stores put the space that they put product out on as a premium, and comic books don't make them money. It's just a fact of life. Archie still has their digest here in the United States at a lot of the grocery stores, but they've had that for decades and they're not giving it up, and apparently it's still working for them. I've really been thinking about this over the last since everything was announced yesterday, and I was worried that I would come off as a jerk because I have this kind of pragmatic thing going on anyways because there's a pandemic, and my thought is I feel really bad for the people that own comic shops that are now their livelihoods are in jeopardy. On the other hand, business has changed. The fact that we've had comic book shops where you could go every Wednesday to get new product for as long as we've had this is kind of a minor miracle. And I don't think this is going to kill comic books. I think it is just going to radically alter the distribution channels for which comic books are distributed. And whether that means relying more on digital or bookstores kind of picking up the slack, or going more away from monthly editions and working on graphic novels and trade paperback collections that you can sell in other venues. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just have this feeling, and I don't normally make these pronouncements, but I have this feeling that we're about to go through a world-changing event when it comes to how we collect comics, at least as far as new comics are concerned.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think there are a number of elements here. So comic book stores have been living on a knife's edge as it is. They're barely making a profit, if at all. And they've become few and far between as far as comic books are concerned. Like physical comic book stores here in Australia, and I imagine there in the US as well, are not as prolific as they used to be. There used to be one or two in every suburb kind of around here, but now you've got to go miles and kilometres before you can even find a comic book store, if you're lucky to have one near you. So this is going to be, even if there's two things for comic book stores at the moment. They're probably being shut down because they're not an essential business anyway. And if comic books aren't going to be coming out, then there's no use them being open, even if they could be open. So that's double whammy there for them. Secondly, if comic books are not... I'm sure DC have a number of comics already printed, published, and ready for distribution, but now they're stuck in a warehouse or they're stuck in the printing process, whatever that might be. So there might be months worth or weeks worth of comic books ready to be distributed, but they're not going to be able to hit the shelves because of this stop by Diamond Comic Distributors. So there might be still some new comic books to come out, but whether or not comics continue digitally without their comic book printed counterparts is going to be interesting, because one, they probably will for the short term, because these comics are ready to go out and would rather have some income than none at all as far as comic book buying is concerned. I'm sure DC would prefer to have digital purchases than no purchases whatsoever. But long term, if, say, for instance, for example, this somehow kills off the printed comic book industry, then is there enough margin in digital only for DC to continue, or for any comic book publisher to continue on a digital only basis? Is that enough of a big enough market? Will enough people jump from print only to digital if that's the only way they can get their comic books? It's a really precarious position the comic book publishers are in at the moment.
Yeah, and that comes down more to if you have that source of revenue that comes from the shops, because comic companies did rely on the shops to distribute their product. If you have that revenue cut off and you don't make up enough of the gap for digital sales, digital comics have an easier time of it because there's no physical overhead for it outside of server space. And really and truly, when you think about it, writers write from home usually anyways. Artists, excuse me, my allergies have been acting up. Artists draw usually at a home studio, and they send all these things via email. And you can really, I think it's probably not easy, but it is conceivable that the production side of it, the colorists, the inkers, people that package everything together, can also do that from home, because you're doing it on a computer. And you can, conference call and get everything together. The question then is, how much money is that gap going to be enough to pay the salaries of the creators? Because, these people have, there's different page rates and all that. But, if you're not making as much money, you can't afford to pay the creators as much. So what does that do? And long term, worst case scenario is this kills monthly comics altogether. I don't think that's going to ultimately happen, but that's the worst case scenario. From there, what do you do? Well, Marvel and DC can still produce things digitally, probably just not at the rate that they normally do. Also, they have the benefit of having a large back catalog of books that they can release. Dan DiDio said, the reprints are doing better than new comic books these days. That's a short-term thing, because eventually we're going to grow old and die. And we're not going to want to buy the comics of our youth anymore. Especially after we're dead, because that cuts the desire to
come back as a zombie.
Yeah, but then, you're not really... How do you pay for anything? You don't have a Social Security number anymore. But my point is that I don't think comic books are going to die. I don't think this medium is going to die. And I definitely think that Disney and Warner Brothers are not going to let these IPs go.
No.
Just go fallow. It's just, what does this ultimately mean for... there are people that still like to go to the comic shop every Wednesday and get their latest books, because there is a social aspect to that as well. Because you go there, if you have a good relationship with the owner, you talk with them, 10, 15 years ago, I would go on Wednesdays and it would be like Cheers. Everyone, you walk in, Mike, and this is a dog eat dog world, and I'm wearing milk bone underwear. I mean, and stuff like that. But it's just, it's weird that I'm in this position I'm in, because if this was 5 years ago, I'd be freaking out.
Yeah.
But now I'm just like more chill about it. The thing that I keep coming to is I just feel really bad. The guys that own First Edition Comics, which is where I was buying my comics from until very recently. I like Jared a lot. He was a really cool guy, and it was his dream to own a comic shop. And now, because of nature and the economic system, that might not be an option anymore. And this is the truth. This is the thing. Like, a small business being successful is a rare thing. You have like restaurants that stay open for decades, and small store, like used bookstores and stuff that stay open for a really long time. But especially here in the States, and it's probably the same in the UK and Australia and Canada and everywhere else people are watching us right now, it is really hard to keep a small business afloat. Yep. Especially now that Amazon and Walmart and all these online and big box retailers are kind of choking them out. So it's almost like it's not, comics are a microcosm of that, but it's glaring just because it's what we're into.
Yeah. And they are the source material of a lot of other bigger entertainment, movies, video games, T-shirts, calendars, posters, you name it. They're the source material for all those things. So if you don't have news stories about those characters coming out in story, book form, whether it be comic books, graphic novels, what have you, then they don't necessarily perpetuate the continuation of those characters in other mediums. So they are an important aspect of the entertainment industry, even though they're only a small, like I said, a microcosm of the bigger picture. But it's just going to be an interesting time. We haven't heard from DC Comics yet in an official capacity about what this means. I did get an email from Clark Bull, one of the people at DC Comics who are at the forefront of, they're keeping touch with reviewers and people, the entertainment industry. And, saying, look, just push as much as you can for the comics that are available this week, and, make sure people know that, find my local comic shop and all those kind of things. The links for all those websites are there. But, there's these comic shops, locators and what have you, aren't going to mean much in another week or so if those comic book stores have to shut down because there's no new comics coming in, or they're told you're not an essential business, shut down anyway. So it's a really pivotal point in history for comic book stores this next week.
Yeah, it's really weird being alive right now. Because nothing is certain. And yet, at my job, it's like this weird gray area where everyone is just carrying on the best they can as if everything's normal, but it's not normal.
Not at all. Not at all. All right, so what is available this week? Of course, it could be the last time you go out to buy comic books, or, we don't know what's happening. So here is what we can tell you about what is available this week for Superman fans. We have the first cover for Action Comics 1021. This is also available in a nice variant cover. Also out this week is Batman Superman number 8. And that is also available in a pretty cool variant cover. Legion of Superheroes number 5 is also out this week, and that, yes, is available in another variant cover. And then Supergirl number 40, the conclusion of this story, is also available in a variant cover as well, with looks like Supergirl's having a donut and a drink there, so keeping kind of, or it could be a pretzel, but that's what Supergirl likes to do on the TV series. She's a big fan of donuts. Then we have Dollar Comics Justice League of America number 1. That's from 2006. We also have Dollar Comics Justice League number 1 from 2011. Of course we do. Then we have Event Leviathan hardcover, collecting that story. We have Harley Quinn Volume 4, The Final Trial trade paperback. Oh, that's not the cover for that. Where is it? Yes, there it is. That's available because there's a Lex Luthor story in that if you're a completist and looking to get all your Superman fix in comic book form. Also have Justice League Origin Deluxe Edition. Sorry, that's the nail. It should be coming up there. There it is. Justice League of America, the Nail, the complete collection. And then, as I said, Justice League Origin, the Deluxe Edition hardcover. So quite a few books, yes.
So is that the new 52 Justice League Origin?
Yes. It looks like
with the new Justice League logo. That looks really weird. That's what's throwing me off. Speaking of logos, this is nitpicky. I really hate that Batman Superman logo for the new series. I think it's cover. Really ugly. I just honestly think that it does absolutely nothing for me.
Fair enough.
I think that's one of the things that turns me off about the series is that I hate the logo.
So you talk about the title treatment at the top of the comic book.
Yeah, the title treatment. Yeah, the trade dress or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, fair enough. And if you want to check out some preview pages from those comic books, we have a number of internal pages for Action Comics 1021. We have Batman Superman number 8 and Legion of Superheroes number 5 and Supergirl number 40. All have preview pages right there up on the Superman homepage under the Superman comic books available this week for March 25th news post. So make sure you check that out because, as I said, who knows when new comic books will be available for us comic book fans and readers.
Mm-hmm.
Looking ahead, but if we do get a release of this, Jimmy Olsen number 10, DC this week released a number of interesting script to, script to inks. We've got a number of internal, there's the cover for it, but a number of internal pages or the inks and the script next to it. So what you have here is you've got the script from writer Matt Fraction on the right hand side, and then you've got the inks by artist Steve Lieber on the left hand side, and it's kind of interesting to see how that works and how the writer formats his script and then what the artist has to work with as far as being able to pencil and ink the panels and everything based on what the script asks for.
Yeah, and every writer is different.
Yeah,
too. It's like there used to be like if you were a writer for Marvel, you wrote the Marvel method, which means you kicked out a plot that was given to the artist broke it down, and then the pages were given back to the writer, and they scripted it. They probably had the script in mind, but you get the art back, and it was like kind of a more collaborative effort. And then it really seemed to be in the 2000s where writers kind of took more of the forefront, whereas in the 90s it was more of an artist's game. The writers, and it seemed like going full script was more and more pervasive.
There you have it. So check those out. It is pretty cool to see how behind the scenes how things work, especially if you're interested. If there is an industry to join, if you're interested in following that path and becoming either a writer or an artist in the comic book format. But speaking of things that are cancelling and things that are being, postponed or just totally destroyed by this coronavirus outbreak and the pandemic, is the fact that the Superman celebration for 2020 in Metropolis, Illinois, has been cancelled. The official announcement came earlier this week, and it said this was from the Metropolis Chamber of Commerce. This was an extremely hard decision to make, and many variables were considered. Our primary concern is and always will be the safety of our visitors and guests. At this point, we simply could not guarantee this, nor do we know if restrictions of large gatherings will be lifted by that time. They also go on to say that they had to make the decision based on the current business climate, and that there is it's their primary fundraiser for the Metropolis Chamber of Commerce there, and trying to refund payments and all those kinds of things that would need to take place if they ended up going ahead would just be too much of just too chaotic and just an impossible mission. So they've decided that they have to cancel this year's celebration, which would take place in June. But they said, we hope that you understand this decision and make plans to be at the 2021 Superman celebration, which will return bigger and better than ever.
Yeah, and the other concern is, would people be able to afford to go?
Yes. Or would travel restrictions allow them to go?
Yeah, it's just, this is the thing. I'm really sad. I mean, I'm looking. I have pretty much just told myself that Dragon Con is going to get canceled. It hasn't been announced yet, so I don't know that for sure. But I'm just prepped for that, and that's sad. But at the same time, this is real life, y'all.
Yeah.
We were. I guess my thing right now is like we were really spoiled for a really long time. And I hope we can accept this.
Indeed. And look, if you are stuck at home and you don't know what to do, well, you could do worse than downloading the free Encyclopedia of Superhero video games, which has been released online by author Peter Hoffman. He is basically giving away this digital encyclopedia. It includes the complete list of all video and computer games featuring popular superheroes, from Superman's Atari game in 1979 through to the upcoming Marvel Avengers that'll be released in 2020. And it is just some examples of graphics of Superman characters from video games over the years. The Atari one is there on the left. A great reader if you're into video games.
Wow, that Atari video game was terrible.
For its time, it was groundbreaking. Oh, you've got it there. Right, there you go.
Yeah, a friend of mine sent this to me. I have no idea if it works, but it's kind of cool having the cartridge.
Very nice. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of tonight's show. I know Michael had a This Week in History prepared, but we've run out of time. Important issues to discuss in this week's show. We really appreciate everyone tuning in to hear us talk about some of the things that we're facing in this very uncertain world. But before we do sign off, I'd like to thank everyone for watching tonight's episode of WGBS TV Live. Thank you to everyone there in the YouTube live comments and your participation with the show. We loved being able to answer your questions and react to your comments. A huge thank you to our sponsors and patrons, Tina Murray, Douglas Meacham and John Patrick Van Pelt. And remember, if you want to support the Superman homepage, you can do so for as little as $1. Just head to patreon.com/Superman homepage. But on behalf of myself and Michael Bailey, thank you, Michael.
No, pleasure as always, Steve.
Stay safe, everyone. Remember, if you do want to watch the Superman homepage, WGBS TV Live, maybe you tuned in late, want to catch up on past episodes or tune into this episode again, you can do so via YouTube, our YouTube channel, or the Superman homepage website. The complete hour will be up there for you to watch or rewatch. But we'll be back next week on March 31st for another episode of WGBS TV Live. We hope you will join us then. But until then, be sure to check out supermanhomepage.com for all the daily news updates on everything surrounding the Man of Steel. I'm Steve Eunice on behalf of myself and Michael Bailey. Thanks for watching WGBS TV Live. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay to yourself, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.